27 children were tested who were supposedly SLD from the public school. 7 were developmentally delayed. They were truly slow learners or old-fashioned term retarded. 1 was an autistic child. 1 had neurological involvement that had been overlooked, and we got him to a neurologist that actually had seizure activity. So you had, many of these kids out of the 20, you're talking 1/3 were misdiagnosed. Well, if they were misdiagnosed and placed in, as you say, the diagnosis tends to run the services. So if 1/3 of them were misdiagnosed, no wonder they weren't making any progress in the public school ESE program, because they weren't getting the services designed for the disability or the manifestations of the disability that they had. So I think that's one of the major things that we see in terms of getting a good differential diagnosis, which means going back and looking at what is the actual problem or disability that the child has. And important after that, even in the private sector, we have to go after some of the psychologists and medical doctors to tell me from an MRI that a child is dyslexic. Doesn't tell me how that's being manifested. It doesn't tell me what they need in services, either structurally, emotionally, or academically, until I actually get in there and find out how they're being manifested. And you will, because the science of diagnosis and brain research is getting so sophisticated now, much more than it was before, you're going to begin seeing medical doctors telling you that the child has a specific learning disability or dyslexia from MRI. So you need to have not only a good differential diagnosis, but the diagnosis needs to come with prescriptions as to what to do to make that child move forward or to address their weaknesses through their strengths. It's very important to find the strengths of a child whenever you're doing a diagnosis and get in there and find out what the strengths are, what's the learning patterns that child actually can excel at. And every child can learn, every child can maximize their potential as long as we don't try to teach them the same way over and over again that didn't work.
Thank you. Dr. Thomas, what do you see as a challenge in the diagnosing and evaluating of students with disabilities?
I think one of the key things at Logos, when we're dealing, as I say, with 160 different students, labeling diagnosis is never an issue. It's one of the things that we pride ourselves on. I think part of it can be if you will, the culture of the school, the attitude of the professionals. But from a student's perspective, they each know that they're there for some specific reason. And so it's never an issue as to what their diagnosis is or anything of that nature. Likewise with the parents, that's not an issue. The other thing that I would point out is that if through more from a therapeutic standpoint as well as from an academic standpoint, we are seeing that we question the diagnosis, that's then when we will again work with the school district through the IEP and the parent and the partnership, and or we'll be working with the parent individually and indicating that they perhaps need to go back to the pediatrician, the psychologist, the psychiatrist for a re-eval based upon the behavior that we're seeing. And I think again the key difference that we have is having the 15 licensed therapists. We're able to monitor that behavior. If there's going to be an outburst at 10 o'clock in the morning, 3 out of 5 days a week, that's telling us something. And we're able to share that from a professional standpoint. The recognition is there as far as the mental health profession is concerned, as well as from the pediatrics are concerned. So I think that's the issue from where we would look at it is that one, it's not a problem. They know that each of them is there. They know that we're there to bring hope. We're there to help them succeed in the best way possible. And there again, it's going to take time. It's going to be the trust factor that's going to be able to be involved, and that's where the the one-on-one, that's where the small class size, that's where the individual therapy, that's where the group therapy is all coming into effect.
And that's really great, and that is happening at Logos. But through LDA, one of the things that we do is we go with families to school meetings to make sure that the students are getting appropriate services. And I can tell you that the situation we just heard about from Dr. Thomas is not across the board. We have literally hundreds of families every year that are coming to us saying, I don't understand why there's a problem in this school. So we go, we do the observation, we read over the IEP, and frequently it's incorrect, be it the goals, the programming, the minutes, the services, the diagnoses. And many parents and some teachers don't know that you can request a re-eval. It typically happens every 3 years that we say, should we do testing on this child? But a lot of the times it's not happening unless there's a demand being made by the professionals or by the parent saying we need to reevaluate this. We need to actually do the testing and find out what's going on with this kid. If there was one suggestion for improving diagnoses, what would that be? Obviously not for your school, because it's working there.
Right.
But if we could give a strategy to the public, what would that be for how to improve the process of evaluation?
Well, the one thing that I advocate many times, Kathy Boyd, my senior VP, who is here, we put on a number of seminars. We're willing at any time to do pro bono in school districts, parochial schools. We encourage the open dialogue, communication with the public school, and I think that's the key thing is the tenaciousness, the perseverance, knowing what their rights are, and knowing that they certainly have that opportunity.
And Dr. Hartman, do you have a problem-solving method for this?
I would come back again to the differential diagnosis over just a label or using the exclusion model of the present system. But I think one of the other things that should throw up a red flag is a pattern that we've seen all over the years is in the public sector with the IEP, if you look from one year to the next, and this was true of the ones that we got in from the McKay program as well, and we've done this over the years because most of our kids are private pay and come from the public schools, obviously. But one of the patterns that exist is that the expectations decline. In other words, your IEP 1 year says they're going to do Barnala multiplication tables, for example.